Why older adults keep waking up at 3 a.m. and what it really means for your health and sleep. Senior. The profound quiet of the pre-dawn hours, often specifically around 3 a.m., frequently finds many older adults wide awake, staring into the darkness, unable to recapture the comfort of sleep. This experience, while deeply frustrating and often perplexing, is far from uncommon and is certainly not a mere coincidence or an inevitable, meaningless byproduct of advancing years. Instead, it represents a complex interplay of physiological shifts, psychological responses, and deeply ingrained lifestyle patterns that evolve with age. Rather than signaling a fundamental flaw in one's body or mind, these early morning awakenings serve as subtle yet significant messages, offering profound insights into an individual's overall well-being, health status, and accumulated life experiences. This exploration delves into 5 compelling and powerful reasons why the human body and mind tend to stir precisely at this enigmatic hour as we mature, unveiling what these nocturnal interruptions might truly be communicating. Each facet we uncover transcends superficial explanations, rooting itself firmly in established physiological science, psychological understanding, and the intricate, often unacknowledged rhythms of the aging process. We will examine the subtle yet impactful alterations in hormonal balances, the natural evolution of sleep architecture, emerging health challenges that often manifest most acutely in stillness, and even the profound emotional and social influences that can exert their quiet power from beneath the surface of daily awareness. Our journey through these insights is designed to be not only informative but also genuinely empowering, offering an honest and deeply respectful perspective on the rich tapestry of life lived and the body's remarkable journey through time. By understanding these underlying mechanisms, one can begin to interpret these wake-up calls not as disruptions, but as opportunities for deeper self-awareness and proactive self-care. The knowledge gained here is not merely for the pursuit of better sleep. It is a pathway to a more compassionate understanding and profound appreciation for the intricate processes your body is navigating at this stage of life. Reduced melatonin production, one of the clearest and most universally recognized physiological underpinnings for why older adults frequently find themselves abruptly awake in the deep quiet of the night, particularly around the unsettling hour of 3 a.m., is the inherent and natural decline in the body's melatonin production that is an intrinsic part of the aging process. Melatonin, often colloquially referred to as the sleep hormone, is a critically important neurohormone primarily secreted by the pineal gland, and it acts as the master regulator of our intricate sleep-wake cycle. This cycle, also known as the circadian rhythm, functions as the body's internal clock, meticulously orchestrating countless bodily functions, including when we feel drowsy enough to fall asleep and, crucially, when we are able to sustain that state of restful unconsciousness throughout the night. In the vibrant years of youth, the body typically produced a robust, consistent, and ample supply of melatonin each night. This abundant hormonal presence ensured that individuals could effortlessly drift into slumber and, more importantly, remain immersed in long, uninterrupted stretches of deep, restorative rest, waking only when truly refreshed and the sun began to rise. However, as the decades gently unfold and the body gracefully transitions through various stages of life, the pineal gland's capacity to synthesize and release this vital hormone gradually diminishes. This natural, age-related reduction in melatonin levels profoundly impacts the architecture and overall quality of sleep, making it increasingly challenging to maintain the deep, unbroken slumber once enjoyed so effortlessly. While the initial phase of sleep might still come with relative ease in later years, especially after a particularly active day or a consciously relaxing evening, the early hours of the morning, typically between 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and sometimes stretching to 4 a.m., often reveal the limitations of this diminished melatonin supply. At this juncture, the natural reserves of melatonin in the system can simply dip too precipitously, becoming insufficient insufficient to effectively sustain the brain in its desired restful state. Consequently, individuals may find themselves transitioning from a state of profound sleep to one of gradual wakefulness, not because of an external disturbance like a loud noise or an unsettling dream, but rather due to this subtle internal chemical shift. The brain, lacking the necessary hormonal signal to remain deeply asleep, slowly begins its return toward alertness. This phenomenon is not an indication of any personal failing or a sign that the body is somehow malfunctioning. It is simply a reflection of the intricate internal chemistry evolving in alignment with the natural progression of age. Furthermore, the modern bedroom environment, paradoxically designed for comfort, can exacerbate this already sensitive situation. Even the most minuscule amounts of ambient light, perhaps a faint glow from a distant street lamp filtering through a window, the gentle, rhythmic blinking of a digital clock on a nightstand, or a sliver of light from a hallway creeping under a door, can act as potent suppressors of melatonin production. As the body ages, it often becomes markedly more sensitive to these environmental cues and triggers, rendering that 3 a.m. awakening all the more stark, frustrating, and difficult to ignore. Consider the poignant example of Harold, a man of 72 years, who had always prided himself on being an exemplary sleeper throughout his life. Yet, in recent times, he began to experience an unsettling regularity. He would find himself wide awake around 3:15 a.m. almost every night. His initial reaction was one of confusion and self-blame. He wasn't feeling particularly anxious or distressed, just fully and inexplicably alert, as if his internal alarm had sounded, signaling the start of a new day long before actual dawn. The frustration mounted with each sleepless early morning. However, a turning point arrived when Harold gained the critical insight that this wasn't a personal failing or a manifestation of a broken sleep system, but rather a normal, albeit often irritating aspect of aging, inextricably linked to the natural decrease in melatonin. Armed with this understanding, he gracefully ceased his self-recrimination and instead embarked on a journey of mindful adjustment to his nightly habits. He meticulously transformed his bedroom into a sanctuary of profound darkness, blocking out every stray photon of light. He committed to avoiding all digital screens for a full hour before his intended bedtime, allowing his brain to truly wind down without artificial stimulation. Furthermore, he incorporated a brief, gentle evening walk into his routine, a simple act that powerfully reinforced his natural circadian rhythm by exposing him to natural light earlier in the day and gentle physical activity in the evening. These seemingly minor alterations, taken together, began to send clear, consistent signals to his body. It is still nighttime. Continue to rest. While the occasional early awakening still occurred, Harold had fundamentally shifted his approach from battling his body to collaborating with it. This newfound understanding, this compassionate awareness of his own physiological changes, proved to be an absolute game changer. When one comprehends that waking early might not be a personal failing, but rather a natural chemical recalibration, the immediate response shifts from frustration and resentment towards the body to one of proactive support and informed choice. This profound power of awareness transforms nagging frustration into genuine self-compassion, empowering individuals to make far wiser and more effective decisions about how they nurture their sleep and overall well-being during the precious hours of night. Shifted sleep cycle and advanced sleep phase. Another profoundly impactful, yet often misunderstood reason why older adults frequently experience awakenings around the 3 a.m. mark is directly attributable to a natural, biologically driven recalibration of the body's intrinsic internal clock, a phenomenon scientifically termed advanced sleep phase. As the years accumulate, the delicate symphony of our circadian rhythms, which dictate the timing of our sleep and wakefulness, begins a subtle yet significant shift forward. This means that, over time, an individual may inherently start to feel the tug of sleepiness much earlier in the evening than they once did, and consequently find themselves waking up spontaneously, often without the need for an alarm, at significant significantly earlier hours in the morning. Many might observe themselves beginning to nod off during a television program that once held their rapt attention late into the night, or they might awaken, fully alert at the first whisper of dawn, even on days when they yearn for the luxury of a longer, more extended slumber. This profound shift is not merely a matter of cultivating new habits or preferences. Its roots extend deep into the intricate biological architecture of human aging, and its effects tend to become progressively more pronounced with the passage of each year. In the vibrant chapters of youth and early adulthood, the body's inherent sleep rhythm is typically harmonized with a later bedtime, aligning comfortably with a wake-up time that feels naturally synchronized with the progression of the sun's journey across the sky. However, as the advanced sleep phase takes hold, this entire sleep-wake window gracefully, almost imperceptibly, shifts forward. It becomes entirely common for an older individual to feel an overwhelming urge to fall asleep as early as 9:01 p.m., or even before, often without any conscious intention or effort to do so. What this implies, from a purely physiological standpoint, is that by the time the clock hand sweeps around to 3:00 a.m., the body has already completed the vast majority, if not the entirety, of its necessary sleep cycle. Consequently, when this internal clock signals completion, one might find themselves wide awake, fully alert, and feeling remarkably rested in the dead of night, even as the world outside remains shrouded in profound darkness. This intrinsic retiming does not signify a malfunction or a problem with the body. Rather, it simply illustrates that the body is now operating on a distinct and earlier schedule, one that has been subtly, gently reset over many years, akin to a finely tuned timepiece advancing its hands by a few minutes with each passing season. While this biological adjustment is inherently harmless and a natural part of aging, it can certainly prove to be deeply frustrating and inconvenient if one's personal lifestyle, family commitments, professional expectations, if still working, or deeply ingrained preferences remain stubbornly out of alignment with this new, earlier rhythm. Beyond the purely physiological, there exists a quiet yet powerful psychological dimension to this age-related shift. Many older adults experience a gradual transformation in their living environments, often residing in quieter households or spending more solitary time as children grow and leave and social circles naturally evolve. This increased peace and reduced external stimulation, while often cherished, can paradoxically amplify the body's innate signals to wind down earlier in the day. Without the constant hum of activity, the bustling demands, or the ambient noise that might have once effectively delayed bedtime in earlier life stages, the body's internal system begins its nightly shutdown process with greater efficiency and at a significantly earlier hour. Moreover, for those who have transitioned into retirement, or whose daily routines are no longer governed by the rigid external time cues of work, such as fixed meeting schedules, daily commutes, or structured social gatherings, this internal advancement of the sleep cycle can become even more pronounced and difficult to counteract. The absence of these strong external anchors allows the internal biological clock greater freedom to drift forward to its preferred earlier timing. Consider the illuminating case of Charles, a 68-year-old gentleman who had recently embraced the serenity of retirement. His evenings began to take on a predictable pattern: a leisurely dinner around 5:30 p.m., followed by an hour of television, and then, almost instinctively, a migration to bed by 9:00 p.m. With striking regularity, he would find himself wide awake and fully alert by 3:00 a.m. Initially, Charles, like many others, concluded he was battling insomnia, a condition often associated with restlessness and an inability to fall back asleep. However, once he encountered the concept of advanced sleep phase, a profound realization dawned upon him. His sleep wasn't broken at all. It was simply operating on a new, earlier schedule. This understanding empowered Charles to shift his perspective from one of concern to one of active adaptation. He began to subtly adjust his evening routine, consciously attempting to extend his wakefulness just a little longer. This involved simple yet effective strategies, immersing himself in a captivating book under the warm, inviting glow of a reading lamp, embarking on a gentle, reflective walk after dinner to stretch his evening, and occasionally connecting with his daughter for a brief, heartfelt phone call before finally heading to bed. These small, deliberate social and sensory cues served as gentle signals, helping to subtly stretch his natural sleep window, and crucially, to shift his morning wake-up time closer to the actual dawn. The tangible result was a noticeable reduction in those jarring 3 a.m. awakenings, and perhaps even more importantly, a profound sense of harmonious alignment with his evolved daily life. This natural, age-related shift in the sleep cycle is an experience shared by a vast number of older adults, yet it remains surprisingly under-discussed and poorly understood. Grasping this concept can alleviate an immense burden of guilt or confusion, offering a far more compassionate and effective approach to working synergistically with one's body instead of futilely struggling against its inherent biological rhythms. Therefore, if you consistently find yourself waking around 3 a.m., feeling as though you've already completed a full night's rest, it's highly probable that your body is simply operating on an earlier schedule now. Recognizing this fundamental truth is the first empowering step toward consciously shaping your daily routine in ways that genuinely support your evolving well-being and allow for a more peaceful and fulfilling relationship with your sleep. Physical discomfort and health-related interruptions, a particularly pervasive and frequently understated reason contributing to early morning awakenings in older adults, often pinpointed around the notorious 3 a.m. mark, stems directly from the body's intricate and often acute responses to various forms of physical discomfort or the quiet, insidious progression of underlying health issues. These conditions, which tend to surface and become more prominent during the tranquil, less distracted hours of the night, can act as potent disruptors of sleep. As individuals journey through the later stages of life, the probability of encountering chronic health conditions or subtle yet persistent physiological challenges significantly increases. Many of these conditions possess a remarkable ability to fragment sleep without ever sounding a loud, unambiguous alarm. Instead, they often creep in with a quiet insidiousness, manifesting as a persistent ache in a joint affected by arthritis, the unavoidable pressure of a full bladder, or a sudden sharp twinge in the lower back. Any one of these seemingly minor internal disturbances can be profoundly effective at gently yet firmly nudging an individual out of a state of deep restorative rest, often right in the middle of the deepest phase of the night. For instance, conditions such as osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis can transform the simple act of lying still in the same position for several hours into an increasingly uncomfortable, even painful ordeal. While the initial moments of falling asleep might be relatively free of discomfort, after many hours of immobility, the accumulation of aches and stiffness can become sufficiently pronounced to rouse one from slumber. Similarly, the nocturnal onset of acid reflux or heartburn can be a powerful awakening force, particularly if dinner was consumed late in the evening or if one reclined too soon after eating, allowing stomach acids to surge upwards and irritate the esophagus. Even seemingly innocuous physical sensations, such as an uncomfortably dry mouth, an unexpected muscle cramp that ripples through a leg, or even a subtle shift in the ambient temperature of the bedroom, can be enough to trigger a light awakening during the early morning hours. This is largely because the body's natural defenses and its capacity for tolerance become less robust and more sensitive with age, making it less forgiving of minor disturbances than in earlier years. Among older men, one of the most widely reported and frequent physical reasons for a 3 a.m. awakening is the compelling and often urgent need to urinate, a condition medically known as nocturia. As the body ages, the bladder itself undergoes structural and functional changes, becoming less elastic and therefore capable of holding a smaller volume of urine before signaling an urgent need for relief. Consequently, the urge to empty the bladder can arise with greater speed and significantly increased frequency, while during the daylight hours, the constant stream of distractions and activities can often keep the mind occupied, effectively masking or delaying the sensation of a full bladder at 3 a.m. in the profound silence and darkness of a bedroom. That internal sensation becomes utterly impossible to ignore. Once one is compelled to get out of bed and move, even if it's merely a short trip to the bathroom, the body's physiological state can undergo a significant shift, transitioning from a state of deep, restorative rest to one of heightened alertness. This makes the subsequent return to a state of profound sleep considerably more challenging, often leading to prolonged periods of wakefulness. Furthermore, the widespread use of medications among older adults for a myriad of conditions, ranging from managing blood pressure and supporting heart health to alleviating chronic pain, introduces another layer of complexity to nighttime sleep patterns. Many of these essential medications carry potential side effects that, while not always immediately obvious, can profoundly and silently impact sleep quality. These side effects might include an increased frequency of urination, subtle yet impactful alterations in body temperature regulation, or even an amplified sensitivity to otherwise minor noises or light. The connection between a prescribed medication and a disrupted sleep pattern can often remain unrecognized by the individual until a healthcare professional explicitly points it out, or until a deliberate effort is made to meticulously track daily habits and sleep responses. Take, for instance, the case of Eleanor, a 76-year-old woman who, throughout her life, considered herself a relatively light sleeper. Over the course of the preceding year, she started experiencing consistent awakenings around 3:30 a.m. Night after night, she attributed it simply to just aging, feeling powerless to change it. However, after months of this pattern, she finally decided to discuss her persistent problem with her doctor. Through this conversation, it was discovered that one of her regular medications was subtly affecting her body's hydration levels, which in turn was significantly increasing her nighttime trips to the bathroom. With the expert guidance of her physician, Eleanor made a strategic adjustment to the timing of her medication dosage and integrated a few targeted lifestyle changes, such as modifying her evening fluid intake. As a direct result, she now experiences far fewer awakenings and, crucially, finds it significantly easier to return to sleep when she does awaken. The pivotal takeaway here is that these physical awakenings should not be interpreted as signs of a body that is failing or deteriorating. On the contrary, they are invaluable signals, powerful affirmations that the body is still actively engaged in its vital work of self-regulation, responding, alerting, and adjusting to its internal and external environment. These often subtle signals can serve as crucial guides, steering an individual toward more informed self-care practices, more thoughtful lifestyle choices, and ultimately a deeper, more profound sense of trust in their own innate bodily awareness. Therefore, while waking at 3 a.m. due to physical discomfort might initially feel like an unwelcome inconvenience, it can also be reframed as a quiet, urgent nudge from your body, encouraging you to tune in, to check in with yourself, and to implement small yet impactful changes that can lead to dramatically improved health and a more deeply restorative night's rest. Lifestyle habits that shift your sleep rhythm, a profoundly influential, yet often surprisingly overlooked factor contributing to the recurring phenomenon of older adults finding themselves wide awake at 3 a.m., is rooted deeply in the cumulative impact of long-standing daily habits, seemingly insignificant routines, and a series of seemingly minor choices that, over time, subtly and powerfully reshape the body's intricate internal rhythm. As individuals navigate the journey of aging, many naturally begin to adopt earlier dinner times, initiate their wind-down routines sooner in the evening, and often experience a general reduction in the overall level of physical activity throughout their day. These adjustments, which might appear negligible in isolation, progressively accumulate and converge to send a consistent, albeit quiet, signal to the body. The night should begin earlier. This fundamental shift in the initiation of the nocturnal cycle inevitably, almost logically, pushes the wake-up time forward into those still pre-dawn hours. When daily life transitions into a quieter, less structured phase, particularly following retirement, the body is no longer bombarded by the same robust external cues it once relied upon to regulate its sleep-wake cycle. The absence of the daily commute, the urgent demands of running numerous errands, or the consistent engagement in mentally or physically stimulating professional tasks leaves a void. Without these powerful external anchors, the body's inherent sleep-wake cycle gains a greater degree of freedom to drift, often naturally advancing itself. A calm, dimly lit evening spent in minimal stimulation, devoid of the stimulating rush of earlier years, effectively encourages the brain to commence melatonin production at an earlier hour. This premature release of the sleep hormone invites the onset of slumber well before one might consciously realize the clock has even struck 9 p.m. And once sleep has commenced earlier, the body simply completes its full cycle of rest in a shorter time frame, leading to those perplexing awakenings in the tranquil stillness of the pre-dawn, precisely around 3 a.m., feeling completely rested and alert. Beyond the general structure of the day, there exists a subtle yet significant relationship between the timing of food consumption and the overarching quality of sleep. While eating dinner at an earlier hour is generally championed for its health benefits, in some older individuals, this practice can inadvertently lead to a noticeable dip in blood sugar levels during the overnight hours, especially if no light, easily digestible snack is consumed before bedtime. This nocturnal dip in glucose might not manifest as overt gnawing hunger, but it can nonetheless be sufficient to gently rouse the body from its state of deep sleep. Similarly, the consumption of caffeine, even if limited to the early afternoon, can exert a surprisingly prolonged effect on the system, particularly as the body's metabolism naturally slows with age. This lingering stimulant can subtly lighten the architecture of sleep, rendering an individual significantly more susceptible to waking up at the slightest internal or external disturbance, precisely when the melatonin levels are at their lowest point in the early morning. Consider the narrative of Walter, a 74-year-old man who had recently embarked on his retirement journey. For Walter, these transformative changes in his sleep patterns crept in with such gradual subtlety that he hardly noticed them at first. His days, once meticulously structured by work, became noticeably less formal, and his evenings transitioned into a state of profound relaxation. He found himself consistently having supper around 5 p.m., often drifting off into a light doze in his favorite recliner during the evening news, and habitually heading to bed well before 9 p.m. most nights. Without conscious awareness, his entire daily routine had organically shifted forward by several hours. Before long, he started to experience consistent awakenings around 3 a.m., initially utterly bewildered by why he was wide awake and fully alert, even before the first tentative chirps of the birds could be heard. After a period of thoughtful introspection and a meticulous reflection on his routine, Walter began to implement small yet strategically significant adjustments. He intentionally incorporated a brisk, short walk into his late afternoon, ensuring a dose of physical activity and natural light. He began reading his evening newspaper or books in brighter light, helping to signal to his brain that it wasn't yet time to wind down completely. Crucially, he made a conscious effort to avoid napping after dinner, preserving his sleep drive for nighttime. These deliberate changes, collectively, served to gently push his natural sleep window just a bit later, allowing his body to gradually settle into a rhythm that more closely aligned with his desired wake-up time, resulting in more consolidated and satisfying sleep. What is truly remarkable is how frequently individuals, particularly as they age, tend to overlook the profound and often underestimated power of Consistent routine. Our bodies are deeply hardwired to crave rhythm. They thrive on daily patterns that act as clear, consistent signals, instructing the brain precisely when it's time to transition into a state of rest and when it's time to naturally rise. When these vital signals become attenuated, altered, or simply shift their timing, the internal body clock can lose its precise bearings, often leading to sleep that is not only earlier, but also more fragmented and less restorative. However, by attentively observing these evolving patterns and making thoughtful, compassionate adjustments, it is entirely possible to gently guide the body back toward a sleep cycle that feels inherently more revitalizing, more consolidated, and significantly less disrupted by those perplexing early morning awakenings. Emotional and psychological restlessness. In certain instances, the recurring phenomenon of waking around 3 a.m. has less to do with the tangible, measurable shifts within the physical body and far more to do with the intricate, often turbulent landscape of the human mind and spirit. As we gracefully mature through the various seasons of life, deeply embedded emotional layers that may have once been effectively buried or overshadowed by the relentless demands and sheer busyness of daily existence can begin to slowly, inexorably rise to the surface, particularly in the profound stillness and quietude of the night. These early morning hours, when the entire world outside seems hushed, when the usual cacophony of distractions has receded, often transform into an unexpected stage where unspoken worries, lingering regrets, unresolved memories, or deep-seated longings begin their subtle stirring. One might find themselves lying wide awake, not because of an intrusive noise or a nagging physical pain, but because their mind is quietly, diligently sorting through a lifetime of memories, grappling with unresolved thoughts, or confronting subtle anxieties that they hadn't consciously realized were still very much present and active within them. This particular manifestation of restlessness differs significantly from the more overt, generalized anxiety that might have characterized earlier periods of youth. In later life, it is often quieter, more reflective, carrying a nuanced weight that can feel like a soft, persistent hum in the background of consciousness. It's a pervasive sense that something remains unsettled, even if the precise nature of that unrest proves elusive and difficult to articulate. The mind, when not actively engaged in the immediate tasks and external stimulations of the day, frequently turns inward, reaching backward into the archives of old relationships, replaying pivotal past decisions, revisiting losses that have been endured, or contemplating words that were left unspoken. And precisely because the older body is often no longer rushing frenetically from one responsibility to another, there emerges a unique and ample space for these thoughts and emotions to resonate, to echo a little louder, commanding more profound attention than they might have in busier times. It is also critically important to acknowledge the significant role that loneliness can play in this nighttime landscape. For a multitude of older adults, social circles inevitably and naturally contract with the passage of time. Children mature and move away. Friends become increasingly busy with their own lives or tragically pass on, and the very rhythms of daily routine undergo fundamental transformations. While the daytime hours might be filled with pockets of light, activity, and occasional social engagement, the profound stillness that accompanies nighttime often brings with it a heightened, sometimes painful, awareness of an emotional or social gap. This form of loneliness doesn't always present itself as a crushing, debilitating weight. Sometimes it manifests more subtly as a gentle, persistent desire for deeper connection, or a faint, poignant ache for someone to simply talk to when the house is utterly still and quiet. Consider the deeply relatable experience of Gloria, an 80-year-old widow. During the daylight hours, Gloria maintained a bustling schedule, meticulously tending her vibrant garden, engaging in cheerful phone calls with her beloved grandchildren, and engrossed in watching her favorite television shows. Yet, with a striking consistency, around 3 a.m., she would often find herself waking up. Her thoughts, untethered from daytime distractions, would invariably drift back to cherished moments she had shared with her late husband, or to a constellation of worries she carefully kept tucked away during the brightness of the day. Initially, Gloria, much like Harold and Charles, believed something was fundamentally amiss with her sleep itself. However, through a process of gentle self-reflection and candid conversations, she gradually came to a profound understanding. Her early morning awakenings were not primarily about a sleep disorder at all. Instead, they were her heart's tender, insistent plea to be acknowledged, to be heard, to process and integrate the depth of her emotional landscape, to compassionately support herself through these poignant nocturnal moments. Gloria began a simple yet transformative practice. She started keeping a small, unassuming journal by her bedside. When she found herself awake, rather than fighting the thoughts, she would sometimes gently write down whatever was on her mind. No grand pronouncements, just a few honest, unvarnished thoughts and feelings. She also consciously integrated a quiet, reflective evening ritual into her routine, such as listening to soft, soothing music or drafting a short, heartfelt note to a friend. These small, deliberate acts of reflection and connection provided her complex emotions with a gentle, non-judgmental outlet, serving to ease her mind and allowing her to return to sleep with a greater sense of peace and tranquility. The undeniable truth is that the human heart does not adhere to a strict, predictable schedule. It remembers what it yearns to remember. It poses the questions it urgently needs to ask, and sometimes it orchestrates all of this precisely at 3 a.m. when the external world is at its quietest. But this is not a flaw. It is, in fact, a testament to the profound depth and richness of the human experience. If you find yourself awakening and entering a state of quiet reflection, it might well signify that you are carrying a unique tapestry of wisdom gathered over a lifetime that is now ready to be acknowledged and integrated. You have navigated through countless joys and profound heartbreaks, and these indelible experiences have sculpted not merely your memories, but the very essence of your sense of self. Rather than perceiving these early morning awakenings as something that must be fixed or suppressed, consider approaching them with an open heart, imbued with curiosity and profound kindness. What profound message is your mind genuinely attempting to convey? What deep-seated need within you is asking to be given voice? What part of your evolving self requires a little extra grace, even in the encompassing darkness of the pre-dawn? Sometimes, the most meaningful and restorative forms of rest emerge not from attempting to ignore or push away these deeply human moments, but from consciously honoring them. In embracing this perspective, you may discover not only the elusive promise of better, more profound sleep, but also a richer, more compassionate understanding of yourself at this unique and deeply significant stage of life. Final thoughts. As this comprehensive exploration draws to a close, it is an opportune moment to pause, to breathe, and to quietly reflect on the profound insights that have just been shared. What particular aspects of this discussion resonated most deeply within your own experience or observations? Was it the revelation of the subtle yet significant shift in your body's intrinsic internal clock, the recognition of the quiet, persistent changes in your physical health, or perhaps something even more profound, an emotional or psychological rhythm that only truly reveals its presence when the world outside falls utterly silent? Each of the 5 compelling reasons we have delved into offers a distinct and invaluable lens through which to understand your personal experience of early morning awakenings. Crucially, none of these explanations suggest that there is anything inherently wrong or broken within you. On the contrary, each revelation powerfully underscores the remarkable resilience and intricate adaptability of your body and mind, demonstrating how they continue to work, respond, and evolve with astonishing grace as you navigate this unique and transformative stage of life. There resides a quiet yet immense power in truly comprehending what your body is endeavoring to communicate, especially during those soft, vulnerable hours before the dawn. Instead of reflexively labeling 3 a.m. awakenings as mere nuisances, as unwelcome intrusions into your peace, you might begin to perceive them as profound messages, gentle, persistent signals that are patiently reminding you to listen a little more attentively to your deepest needs, to critically examine your established habits, and to tenderly tune into the quiet murmurs of your own heart. It is vital to remember that you are far from alone in this universal human experience. Countless individuals are navigating similar journeys, seeking answers to these very same questions. But with the acquisition of genuine insight comes a formidable strength, and with that strength comes the invaluable freedom to initiate small yet deeply meaningful changes. These deliberate adjustments can cumulatively support better, more restorative rest, cultivate a deeper sense of physical and emotional comfort, and forge a significantly stronger, more harmonious connection to your own evolving natural rhythms. If you have recognized elements of your own experience within any of the reasons explored today, please know that you are not simply aging in a passive sense. You are actively evolving. And within that profound evolution lies a precious opportunity, an invitation to approach rest with greater intentionality, to care for yourself with unparalleled gentleness and compassion, and to greet each new morning not with frustration, but with a profound sense of understanding, gratitude, and an abiding inner peace.